Autumn 1929. A damp stone storeroom beneath Istanbul's Topkapi Palace. A librarian's fingers closed around a brittle scrap of gazelle skin. It was torn, brittle, and folded into quarters. One surviving fragment of a much larger chart. The ink was Ottoman Turkish, and the date in the corner read the year 1513 on a Western calendar. Nobody in that room knew they were holding one of the most argued over documents in the history of mapmaking. The chart had been drawn by a naval officer named Piri Reis, and it showed coastlines no one expected a 16th century Ottoman admiral to know. Past the coast of what looked like South America, a long, curling landmass ran along the bottom edge. The terrain was complete with precise mountains, rivers, and inlets. Many researchers who have studied that coastline believe it maps part of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 260 years. A routine museum inventory turned into a mystery that would outlive everyone standing in that basement. If that coastline really is Antarctica, someone had charted its shape long before ships had the tools to reach it, let alone see beneath its ice. Decades later, that mystery landed somewhere nobody expected, on the desk of the United States Air Force. A modern superpower, in the middle of the Cold War, took a serious, formal interest in a 500-year-old goatskin chart. But why would a nation racing to put spy satellites into orbit care what a medieval admiral drew? To answer that, you have to go back to the man who drew it. You need the sources he admitted to stealing from, and the coastline that should not have existed on paper in 1513. Then follow that same coastline forward through a Cold War letter. It leads straight into the reason two modern superpowers are still quietly maneuvering over that same ice today. Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri was not a scholar working in a library. He was a career naval officer, the nephew of a Mediterranean privateer, and by the time he sat down to draw his chart, he had spent decades boarding ships and reading captured navigation logs. The Ottomans called men like him Reis, meaning captain, and the title stuck to his name the way a nickname does. In the margin of his 1513 map, Piri Reis did something almost no cartographer of his era bothered to do. He listed his sources. He said he had drawn on roughly 20 older charts, Portuguese sailing maps, the Arabic chart, several rooted in the work of the Greek geographer Ptolemy, and, most remarkably, a map credited to Christopher Columbus himself. That Columbus source has never been found. It exists today only because Piri Reis mentioned it in his own handwriting on the one map that survived. Piece those sources together and you get a strange kind of second-hand cartography. An Ottoman admiral compiling other men's discoveries into a single document decades before most of Europe had agreed on the shape of the New World. For the coast of Europe, West Africa, and the Caribbean, historians consider the map remarkably accurate for its time. It is the bottom of the page that keeps the argument alive. The landmass curling away from South America shows no clean break, no straight, the way a modern map would draw one. Mainstream historians offer a simple explanation. Piri Reis ran out of parchment, so he bent the southern coastline eastward to fit the skin. He folded in an old Greek idea called Terra Australis, a hypothetical southern continent geographers had sketched for 1,000 years without ever setting foot on it. Under that reading, there is no Antarctica on the map at all, just an educated guess, stitched onto a page that had run out of room. But in 1960, an American engineer named Charles Hapgood looked at that same coastline and reached a very different conclusion. Working with Air Force cartographers, Hapgood compared the disputed landmass to seismic survey data of Antarctica's coast, gathered from beneath the ice by 1950s research expeditions. He claimed the match was too precise to be coincidence, down to a peninsula and mountain ranges still buried under the modern ice sheet. His theory, the source maps Piri Reis copied had preserved a coastline no one alive had seen in roughly 6,000 years, a memory passed down from a civilization history has no other record of. Hapgood's theory did not stay confined to academic journals for long. Writers like Eric von Daniken and later Graham Hancock built entire best-selling careers on the idea, using the Piri Reis map as proof of a lost, advanced civilization that had mapped the oceans before the last ice age ended. Professional cartographers pushed back hard. They pointed out the map shows no Drake Passage, the strait separating South America from Antarctica. They argued the entire match depended on rotating and distorting the coastline until it fit whatever shape you wanted to see in it. The debate never fully resolved. It just went quiet, waiting for someone with the right title to reopen it. Piri Reis himself never lived to see any of this argument unfold. He spent his final years commanding Ottoman fleets in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, an old man well into his 80s. Still leading ships against the Portuguese for control of the spice trade, in 1552 he laid siege to the island of Hormuz at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, then withdrew when the ships ran low on supplies and ammunition. The Ottoman governor of Basra accused him of abandoning the campaign. Then, in 1553, Piri Reis was arrested, taken to Cairo, and beheaded. The most detailed mapmaker of his century, executed for a retreat he framed as a decision to save his men. The map that made him famous would not be found for another 376 years. He died without ever knowing anyone would care what was drawn on it. That is the moment this stops being a story about an old map and becomes a story about a modern military. By 1960, U.S. Air Force Captain Lorenzo Burrows, a cartographer working within the Strategic Air Command's mapping division, put his analysis of Hapgood's claim into a formal letter. Burrows stated that, in his professional judgment, the southern coastline on the Piri Reis map was consistent with the actual sub-ice geography of Queen Maud Land. Think about what the Air Force was actually doing in 1960. Because it was not chasing lost civilizations for entertainment. They were building the tools to photograph the entire planet from above. Reconnaissance aircraft over denied airspace, and the earliest spy satellites. Under the codename Corona, the United States had just begun launching film return satellites for exactly this purpose, mapping hostile territory without ever crossing the border. A 300-year-old accuracy puzzle was to them a live intelligence problem. How do you verify a coastline nobody has walked? How do you know if the chart in your hand is lying to you? That is precisely the problem satellite mapping is invented to solve. And here is the part almost nobody connects back to a 16th century goatskin map. The exact Antarctic coastline Piri Reis is said to have drawn by accident is, right now, this year, one of the most quietly contested pieces of geography left on Earth. Since 1961, the Antarctic Treaty has frozen every territorial claim on the continent, banning military bases and resource extraction, at least on paper. 7 nations, including Argentina, Chile, and the United Kingdom, still hold overlapping claims that predate the treaty and will never drop, only paused. The United States and Russia both reserve the right to file a claim of their own whenever that treaty stops holding. China has built 5 research stations on the continent since 1985, 3 of them within the last 16 years alone. Their stated purpose is science. Their infrastructure includes satellite tracking equipment with an obvious dual use military application. A ground station in Antarctica sits in near permanent line of sight to pole orbiting satellites, the same class of hardware used to track troop movements and monitor a rival's missile launches. Under the ice, those stations sit on, geologists suspect, coal, iron ore, and untapped oil and gas, locked away by a mining ban that comes up for renegotiation in the 2040s. The coastline, a medieval Admiral supposedly copied from a lost Ice Age source map, is the same coastline modern superpowers are quietly building infrastructure on, waiting for the legal freeze to thaw. Whether or not Piri Reis ever saw Antarctica without its ice, his map's real legacy is this. It forced a modern superpower to ask the exact question every country with a base on that continent is still asking. Who actually gets to say what is down there? And who gets to prove it first? The original Piri Reis fragment is back where it was found, held today in the library of the Topkapi Palace Museum, too fragile now for public display. Most of the 20 source maps Piri Reis copied from, including the Columbus chart he swore he had used, were never recovered. They are gone, if they ever existed the way he described them. As of this year, the Antarctic Treaty's mining ban still holds. Its next real test arrives in the 2040s, when the nations sitting on that coastline decide whether the freeze was ever meant to be permanent.